All right. So my name is Ron Schwertfeger. I'm one of the librarians here at UAH. And we had a meeting last year of our library student advisory group in which we discussed different programs that the library has, different events that the library holds, and our graduate student members offered to provide today's session on how to do a lit review. Our three panelists today are Megan Flannagin, Jenna Cotter, and Carly Gray. Megan Flannagin is a graduate student in the College of Engineering, where she's working towards her doctorate in material science. Jenna Cotter is a grad student in the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, where she is currently working towards her master's in psychology. And Carly Gray is a graduate student in the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, where she is also pursuing her master's in experimental psychology. So I will let the three of them take it from here.
So welcome to the how to do a lit review. We kind of have a variety of people up here from different groups, so we wanted to make sure to hit everything that you guys want to do. But primarily we want to give you an overview, and then we'll go into kind of a demo and work through with you guys. And if you have any questions, we're happy to work through it, just kind of how it goes. So we're going to start off with what are literature reviews and why are they important?
Sorry. You're trying to bring the notes. Yeah.
And so literature reviews are very important, especially in any kind of research. You can be in engineering, you can be in sciences, you can be in psychology. Literature reviews put together everything that everybody else has already done into one body of knowledge, basically. And so to know the step that you want to take, you need to know what's already been done. A lot of classes will require that you do literature reviews before researching a topic so that you know, like I said, what's already been done before. And it's also a very good step in scientific research for me in engineering, going through and seeing what worked and what failed for other people so that you can kind of target exactly where you're going. But first, it really gives credit to researchers who have already worked on the topic. You want to make sure that whatever you're citing or whatever research you're doing, you're giving credit to the people who had the building blocks for that. It also will present context for your proposal or your current research, and it locates gaps. Like I said, you can see where they failed, what they missed, and you may be able to fill those gaps once you see what's going on. And so the first kind of step to a literature review is, what is your goal? What are you looking for in a literature review? I can go to Google and just start typing random things, but you're not going to get anywhere unless you have a focus. So you need to make sure that you know exactly your why for doing a literature review so that you have a target to go after. So are you summarizing the accomplishments of past research? Most of the time those are called reviews, that you kind of put together a whole review of everything that you can find. Are you just trying to look for gaps to see where you might get extra funding? Are you trying to find research that's going to support what you've already accomplished and you're trying to write a paper? Meta-analysis, are you doing your thesis? And so all of these things you have to ask yourself before you start looking, why am I looking? And make yourself a goal so that you don't get down rabbit holes, which we'll talk about in a little while. And you also want to look, is it focused or is it broad? So like I said, a review earlier. So there are some literature reviews that typically say a review at the end of it, and they're very broad, trying to bring together everything that somebody can find about a topic and every piece of literature that they can piece together that's even close. And so those are what we call broad literature reviews. You also have some that are focused. And so a focused example is, I'm looking at a certain additive for a battery. I'm not just looking at a battery system. We're breaking it into small components. And so that's what we would call a more focused. And so before you really start diving in, you need to know, am I allowing myself to do broad spectrum, or do I really want it to be focused on this one teeny-weeny topic? And that'll help you later down the road when you're trying to find the literature that we're going to guide ourselves with.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carly, of the three of us. And we also wanted to include a quick acknowledgement of reliability and validity. And so when we're talking about this, we're talking about the reliability and validity, of course, of the papers that you're finding in your lit review. So not all research is necessarily high quality. Some of the things, at least in social sciences, that we look for are, and depending on your purpose, is that something's peer-reviewed. In other cases, you may want to be examining gray literature, which is maybe not peer-reviewed. But this is something you really want to focus on. And one way to identify the strengths and weaknesses of experimental research is to look at the different types of validity. So you have construct validity, which refers to whether or not you're measuring a construct that you think you're measuring. So this is really relevant to Jenna and my work in social sciences, where we're looking at maybe a psychological construct, right? It's not something that you measure directly, it's something you measure indirectly. So we want to make sure we're measuring exactly what we say we're measuring. If we say we're measuring preference, we don't want to actually be measuring satisfaction, which could be very different. And also, are you properly applying the theory that you're, or is the paper properly applying the theory that it says that it's applying? We also have internal validity, and what that has to do with is whether you've controlled for extraneous variables. So you want to make sure that any papers that you're citing have properly controlled for extraneous variables, make sure their independent variable is the only explanation for their results, and that they're using consistent methodology to get their measurements. External validity basically has to do with generalizability. So does everything that happened in the study, if you want to talk about it as though it's generalizable outside of that particular context, then you need to make sure that it was designed with a representative sample and make sure that it's generalizable to other situations. And then finally, statistical validity. Here we're talking about, did they properly apply statistics based on the data and the variable attributes? So, you know, if the paper is using ordinal data, did they use the proper statistics to analyze ordinal data, for example? If they have non-normal aspects to their data, are they using the proper statistics to deal with that?
And so how do you normally start your review process? Where do you search and what do you start? Anybody, how would you start a review?
Google Scholar, honestly.
Google Scholar? I mean, that's a pretty good one. We were using it earlier today.
JSTOR.
Yeah, JSTOR. And so there's a lot of places to start where you can just immediately go to a website and start looking. And so it's important to make sure that you can use Google Scholar and you can use JSTOR, but we need to make sure that you're looking broad spectrum and how you're doing it, well. Sorry. Okay. And so whenever you're looking on those websites or JSTOR or databases, it's important to make sure that you're searching in a way that you're actually getting the results that you look for. So I can come up with a sentence like how I told earlier that we need to start with a goal. So typically for myself, I'll make a sentence and kind of go through, it looks very close to my hypothesis. So I'm going to make a sentence about what I want to show from my literature review. And so then I'll go through and look at, what my sentence structure is. So I'm talking about lithium-ion batteries. So obviously I need to include lithium-ion batteries if I'm being specific about what I'm looking for. And then I'm looking at energy density and availability. And then, however, degradation and sustainability are problems. And so as you go through and you see this sentence, it's a really long sentence. If I just try to stick that in Google Scholar or something, your results are going to go crazy. Or you're going to have none at all because you have too much there. So what I typically do is I construct a sentence and then I break it down into components. Kind of think of like an outline for whenever you make a paper. You're like, I have paragraph 1 that I'm going to talk about sustainability, paragraph 2 that I'm going to talk about availability. And so I go through looking for key points that I really want to hit on. And so I can break that into, instead of one long sentence, we can look at lithium-ion battery energy density. And so that'll be one section of just a search that I do. So I'm telling myself that I'm going to limit myself to looking at what data I can find or what literature I can find on energy density. And so once I'm satisfied with what I've found on energy density, then I'll go to my next topic. So I have availability. So now we look at lithium-ion battery availability. And so as you go through, you're kind of building yourself a platform to already have, the structure and body of your review. So if I, like I said, how you can do paragraph view, you know exactly what papers are going to go where within your review, and you're also limiting your search and helping yourself by limiting your search to show up the best papers and reviews possible. You also, as you start searching, you may start realizing that there's other terms that you didn't think of. So sometimes I have a hypothesis or a sentence that I'm based off of, and then you'll find a paper that'll guide you to another paper, which can get a rabbit hole, but it also makes up where it's like, oh, I didn't think about that when I was generating what I was originally searching. And so it brings up other topics. I believe in social sciences.
Yeah, we have constructs that are, everybody comes up with their own term for often a very similar construct. So in social sciences, this happens a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is fine. Okay, so places that you can look, right? So where you might start. So the library has the Primo Pathfinder search bar on the library page. Is everybody familiar with that? Yes, no? Okay, I see some yeses. No? So if you go to the library's homepage, I think we're going to do this in a minute as part of the live demo. There is a search bar where you can search the library's holdings and electronic holdings as well. We also have the LibGuides databases through the library, and we'll see that as well later. The library does have, obviously, hard copies in their holdings. And you can also request things through interlibrary loan. And I believe, are we going to show that?
Primo has that ability.
Okay, if we don't demo that, let us know if that's something that you're interested in, because it can be kind of tricky to find where you're supposed, where you request through interlibrary loan. And you can do that for hard copies of books, or you can do it for sometimes electronic. Like I'm often requesting through the interlibrary loan interface different journal articles that maybe I found through Google Scholar, but maybe aren't available through the databases through the library, and you can request those that way and get a copy of them in PDF. So that's another great resource. And then, of course, as you guys already know, Google Scholar and ResearchGate is another place that you can go. It's kind of like, would you say social media almost for researchers?
Yeah, I go on there a lot, and you can be up to date with the current research, so it updates every second. And if you follow researchers, or if you have, you're in a lab, like we're in a lab in the psychology department, she has a lab, you can be a part of your lab and just share your research, and you can get the very top new.
Yeah, the most current of what's going on. And
it's different. It's fun to look in.
Yeah, so you can kind of review what, maybe if there's particular researchers that you sort of follow their work, or they're kind of prominent in your field, you can see what they're working on. Because if I'm not mistaken, researchers create a profile on this, and then they can sometimes put their preprints in there so you can see stuff before it actually gets published, once they have a manuscript ready, which is kind of nice as well.
And if you need to, if you want to look at that, I can help you all.
Okay, so using the UAH resources to search. So I have here that we're going to do this interactively, so let me pull up. We're going to log in, and we're going to open the UAH website. So do we already have this, or do you want me to make a new?
Make a new one.
Okay. Sorry, I want to make sure I can see what I'm supposed to be doing while I'm doing it. So what I do is I just do this.
You can follow along if you want.
And then I just go here. So once you're here on the library, you can hover over academics. Oh, well, we're already at the library, right? But if you were on the UAH website, you can hover over this and click Salmon Library down here. Can you guys see my cursor? Yeah, you can. Down here is where you would click on it. But we're already there, so we don't have to click on it. And then you can click Articles and Databases right here, and this takes you to the A to Z databases. So I know Jenna and I scroll all the way down to P, and go to Psych Info, which is further down. I think you can actually add the top, click P. I never do that.
It's
so we would
faster.
go away. Here, let's show you how much faster that is. So there's all these letters here at the top. You can just click P, but you still have to scroll all the way through all this stuff.
Less
Yeah, it's less. But depending on what you're going for, right? So if you were going through Academic Search Complete, I think you can go directly there from here as well. Academic Search Complete. And there's some of these examples, right? Oops, you can't see them because you can't see. Academic Search Complete is one that I think all three of us use pretty regularly, I think you said. Psych Info and Psych Articles is good. IEEE Explore, and I don't know how you guys say it, I say CINAHL. Yeah, so different databases are better for different things, right? Because they're focused in different fields.
And don't let the whole database kind of overwhelm you. If you don't know where to start, back on the library page, there's the Primo Pathfinder search bar. And so it's not a comprehensive everything, and Ron can probably go into more of that later. But if you don't know where to start and you don't even know what, where you want to be looking here, you can kind of go to the broad spectrum.
Sorry.
No, you want to do it. No, you can show it. No, I'm good. But it looks exactly like this. But on the library page, there's a search bar. And so sometimes when I start searching and I'm like, I don't know what journal or what database that I really need to be looking in, I'll go to Primo Pathfinder and just kind of type in lithium-ion availability. And it'll kind of start showing me where what I'm looking for is showing up. And then I can go straight to Science Direct, or I can go to other journals, but it helps give me a target knowing what database am I actually, there it is. Yeah, and so you can search there and it'll bring up the books. It also has the ones actually in-house as well. But it's a good starting spot if you don't know where you're trying to start at. Sometimes the databases get very overwhelming. You can also hit the advanced search button, and that will help you get a little bit more control over everything that you're looking for. And I think we'll go into that in a little bit. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys know this is here, because I personally use it a lot, especially when I'm starting out. If I don't specifically know if Science Direct is going to have what I want. So I'm going to pass it back to you guys.
All right, so I think Jenna is going to be next. Example. Yeah. So I'll let you pull that up.
Okay. So we already have a topic, and it's super fun sites, but you can also put your own topic in and just follow along with us with the same search
On your own
keys.
Device.
Yeah. Okay, so I did this process when I was an undergrad, and it really helped, and I really appreciated the librarians for doing this for me because I learned a lot. And so when I was asked to be a part of this, this was the example I first thought of because I found it very insightful. And so, have any of y'all utilized this website? Okay, that's good. Well, that's not good. But it's great because we can teach you how, and I'm sure your professors will love that. So usually when I start out, I would utilize some of these options to help my search not be as broad. But for right now, we're okay with broad. It's scary, but we're gonna go broad first. So we're gonna type in super fun. And you can search and hope and see. Okay, so there are 100. How do you do the thing? The laser.
Oh, L.
But I don't think
That's within the
that's
slide.
in the other
You're right.
slides, yeah.
Oh. I guess we don't have a laser.
So this is good. Okay,
Yeah.
so there are a lot of articles that you will probably spend way too long looking through, and no one wants to do that. So there's some ways you can do this to make it easier on yourself. So
And like sometimes the broad is good. If you, like I said, if you haven't decided where your target is, then you can kind of glance through and see what topics you're interested in. But 1,200 articles is, I mean, by all means, read them all if you like, but that's a lot. And so you don't know what article is really important, and so you have to kind of keep narrowing down, which is what we're going to keep doing. But sometimes it's okay to start broad, but at some point you've got to kind of start reeling it in and really targeting on what you're trying to find.
Do you want to talk about the
Yes. So some strategies when you have either too many results, like what Jenna just showed, where we have like
1,000.
sometimes you can have thousands. You can have so many sometimes. If you have too many, or sometimes you do that and you get like two things that come up, and neither one of them is really a journal article. Yeah, so that can happen as well. So what you can do is you can consider using related keywords. So maybe like in our case, how I talked about, there's oftentimes multiple words for the same construct, or you can kind of get creative thinking about other keywords that kind of come at your topic from a different angle or are like related, adjacent sort of. So that's one way. You can look for nested publications. So this is you kind of already need to maybe have found an article that you're either interested in that's in the same field, and what you can do is go look at the reference list. So once you have something that's on topic, that's a great article that's talking about what you're interested in, you just go to their reference list, and that's one way that you can find stuff. And also can find related keywords, because you'll see stuff in the titles of articles that are in the reference list. And in terms of those related keywords, when you're adding them into the this search bar, you see there's the and drop down here, and you can also choose and, not, or, right? And if you use and, that will combine the two terms, and it'll search for both of them at the same time. I know it seems obvious, but you just never know what's obvious and what's not. So if your search is too general and you're trying to narrow down a lot of results, you might want to use and add 2 keywords, right? Or even 3. If you have a search that's way too broad, you can also narrow it by omitting stuff, right? So if you use the drop down that says not, so like what's a great example? So sometimes you're you're searching for trust, but you don't want anything on like, I don't know, situation awareness or something. Like you just want to look at one aspect of a construct. You can use not and say, hey, I'm wanting to look at this, but I don't want to look at this. Like I want to look at cats, but not lions, right? So that will take away a bunch of stuff that may come up attached to what you're looking for.
That also helps if you are looking at more of governmental documents, and then there are also things, search articles that come up that are not related at all to government. You can put those constructs and clarify not to go more into those specifically.
Like if you like not.gov or something,
yeah.
Something like that. And then you can also use or, and this will broaden a search, right? So this will look at everything that has keyword 1, and it will look at everything that has keyword 2, and they don't have to both be in the same document. But when you use the and, it will only return you stuff that has both keywords in the same document. So that's the difference between and or. And then you can also try different databases, which I'm a huge fan of this. So I will go in and I'll just search all the databases if I'm getting really desperate. And then you'll sometimes get a lot more stuff. So that's another option. And I think, I don't know if we're going to show that specifically, but the way that you do that is you go here. Can I do it?
Yeah.
And you click choose databases. And here you can pick and choose which databases you want to search for those keywords. So if I'm particularly desperate, I will just do this, boom. And I will just search everything, and it will give you tons and tons of stuff. But like in the social sciences, oftentimes there's people have done stuff in education that are related to what I'm interested in, and people have done stuff in organizational, like workplace psychology, that are also related to the stuff that I'm interested in. So sometimes doing this is really helpful for me in my field.
It really helped me. I have a journal article that I'm currently working on, and it involves many disciplines within our university, like communication, health, nursing, engineering, and I'm a psychology major, yet I needed research in those types of fields, so I found that very helpful.
Yeah, nursing, health, medicine, sometimes will return stuff that maybe you didn't think of at the outset as maybe being relevant to your research, at least for us.
It's really fun to see because you can find collaborations that way too, between y'all's departments.
Megan, did you have anything to add on this one?
I think you guys covered most of it, especially with doing the database. So I'm from the engineering side of things, so I don't really use the databases that they use all the time. And most of the time it's going to be Science Direct or Academic Search Complete or some form like that. But sometimes those still aren't going to have what you're looking for, especially when you're trying to do background research. So for me, I always go to lithium-ion batteries. So I can find the engineering stuff, Science Direct, but what if I want the humanitarian results? Or what if I want to look at, what's the cost? What's the feasibility? You don't really see a lot of engineering papers talking about that. So you also have to keep in mind where you can go to find things that are related, but not necessarily how you would kind of think they would be related to. So always, make sure that you're utilizing the different databases and kind of just try it. It'll honestly most of the time surprise you what you'll find that you thought should be in another category, and it's actually, humanitarian. So I think that's the only comment.
I found research that was related to my journal article in theater and arts, and that was particularly surprising about our research because it's automation, and theater does utilize robots on the stage that I learned, and I was very surprised. But I'm glad that I could give that part of the paper that perspective.
And that can add generalizability to your own research as well, like we were talking about earlier. And another thing I wanted to also just kind of mention as an aside is, as researchers, a lot of times people will, maybe their work won't be accepted for publication in the first journal that, like, Journal of Experimental Psychology, like maybe they rejected your paper. Well, what researchers will do is they will sometimes go for more niche journals. And so that's why you can sometimes find something related maybe to automation in a theater thing. Like maybe it was psychologists that were looking at theater contexts, like maybe somebody sponsored them to do some research, and so that it ends up in a place you wouldn't look for it on the first run through. So short lesson is use the data, use all the databases.
So some ways you can narrow down your topic are usually if your professor is wanting you to do a literature review or even just a research paper, they will want you to use maybe peer-reviewed or full text within, and those can be seen on this red box. And also you could, if sometimes in our department they like to have newer articles, so you can range from old to new. It can go so far back.
Like specifically, sometimes I want 2015 or newer, because that's when like a lot of the technology shifted. And so I can limit a lot of papers by just putting a start year, like, don't look before 2015. That helps you get more current research as well.
And that can help narrow the scope.
And another comment here, I don't know if this one specifically has dissertations, and I know some people hate dissertations. Some people hate them, but some people love them. And for me, especially in engineering, a lot of publications will cut out to the bare bones. So they'll give you the equations, they'll give you their method, they'll give you their results. But sometimes if I'm trying to come up with a new method or something that I'm trying in the lab that I've never done before, I like to go to dissertations because they specifically list out every step that they did and go in way more detail than what you can put in a publication. But, you know, there's certain times when you don't want to just cite a dissertation, and you need peer-reviewed journals because they're very important. But dissertations can help you, and sometimes even the reference lists in dissertations I've found to be really helpful. Normally there's like 200 of them, so don't get overwhelmed. But if I find a paragraph in a dissertation that I'm like, oh, they're looking at the methodology that I'm interested in, then I can just go look at the references that they looked at, and it'll kind of help me backtrack to find, you know, how I need to be doing something correctly. So you can also, you know, search, broaden, or, you know, specify by dissertations.
I also will add that dissertations, and if you are looking even at a master's thesis, they also help when you are trying to either do a dissertation or a thesis and you're trying to find that gap in research, because they go through everything within that topic usually, and that's where you can make sure you're not wasting time or just...
It's like not reinventing the wheel. Like there's people out there that
That
have
have already
already
invented.
done very exhaustive searches, and those are people writing dissertations. So if you look at them, you get a really comprehensive view of a topic once you've found one. I wanted to, before we go off the slide, also mention another one that I find kind of handy. So oftentimes I will end up with search results, especially because I like to do the super shotgun approach of using all the databases. Sometimes I will get stuff in foreign languages, and there is a spot on here. Well, there's a couple things here that I use pretty frequently. I'll pull up so we can scroll through and show you right here. Back to where we do the search. Okay, so this is where you would enter in your search, right? And you can, well, here you can select your publication type. But here in the languages, you can select English. And there's even something, I think, lower down. Sometimes there's a little checkbox that says English only. But you can select English if you only want English results. A lot of times I'll get stuff in German or Russian or like an Asian language that's based on, you know, like a pictogram. And I can't read it. So there's no point in seeing those results. And then the other thing I think I wanted to mention is full text. So you can also search and omit everything that's not full text. What does that mean? So that means, so that means that the full document's available right then and there. A lot of times you'll find stuff that sounds really promising in the title and the abstract, but we won't have access to it through the library. When that happens, then I go to Google Scholar, but oftentimes it's still behind a paywall. If that's the case, then you go to Interlibrary Loan and they get it for you. But you know, if you don't want, like, say you're just writing a paper for experimental, you're in experimental design and you just need to write this lit review paper, then you just want to click that full text and you don't have to go through that rigmarole of hunting down papers that we don't already have in the electronic holdings.
Unless you're so passionate, like us, about research that you go the extra mile.
But you don't want to go the extra mile.
Not for
all
just
you
one.
have to do is a paper for class.
So spend your time wisely.
Yes.
But make use of the Interlibrary Loan. If you find a paper that you're like, this is exactly what I need, but I just can't find it, they're always there to help. And I've used the Interlibrary Loan several times. And typically, you'll get them pretty quickly. I mean, I know they're busy and get backed up sometimes, but most of the time, in under a day, I have mine back.
Which means
you
the
don't
world.
want to like hang your grade on the fact that you're going to get them, that they're going to send it back to you in 2 hours. But very often, that desk there behind, they have saved my stuff.
Yeah.
So.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through maybe trying to narrow this Superfund topic down to not have 1,000 and maybe have a little more manageable. So first we have this. Ooh. and that has our 1,000 research articles. So when we, I don't know why I keep saying that, sorry. You can, does anyone remember what word narrows a topic down? Are you adding and, or?
And.
Yeah.
Somebody said and.
Yeah. So you can, sometimes I do this, and then you can also relate Superfund sites to health. And that's a little more manageable. There's only almost 300, which
Better than 1,200.
better than 1,200. So you can go even further sometimes, and that's when I usually go over here and I can say I just want full text. And there's 103, which is still a lot, but it's manageable. And if you want to go further, you can go further. I've researched topics where only one article pops up, and you think that would never happen, but it does. And it's very often.
It's only when you're most desperate that happens.
It's the ones you're most passionate about that you just can't find. So I'm just going to, how about a happier topic? How about we do a happier topic? Anyone have an idea? Anyone having a research articles or like a research project that they need? I love to do this, so
yeah.
Give me what you need.
What are you guys working on?
Aluminum 7,000.
I'm
I'm about to say.
I won't.
Yeah, don't know what that is.
So, like, just the alloy, like the certain.
Well, so
What about aluminum?
starting with 7050, the evolution of that, because from that stems 7068, 7075.
Okay, she's like, and I'm trying to think of how I wanted to look at it. So, and some of them you get two.
But that's also with full text. That's full text.
Yeah, and that's full text. And so if we remove that, we get 11, which is still way better than nothing at all. And so sometimes if I come here and the 2 wasn't enough, we can remove some and get some more other like options. But then we can also come and see so let's look at the annealing process. So the microstructure, evolution, and mechanical properties. So if I need to keep going down this aluminum rabbit hole, not really a rabbit hole, I feel like it's a rabbit hole, then you could look specifically for aluminum and then use microstructure and mechanical properties, or change it to aluminum. I'll do that. And did I spell that right? I think so. Microstructure, and then let's also do 7075. 7050, sorry. And so we get different results coming from that. But all you're doing is taking a paper that you found that you're like, oh, this title talked about aluminum 7075, 7050, and just changing how you're searching. So now adding in microstructure, even though we're still looking under the aluminum category, just adding one word gave us 99. And so it really does help whenever you give, the search engines a little bit more to go on than just aluminum. Just keep going. And, the further down you go, you can find heat treatment. So if you find a certain heat treatment that you want based on that, you can also go up here and add it. And so you kind of just start broad and then think of it like a tree kind of branch thing. You go down one and then you'll stop and then you'll go down the other. So we'll look at microstructure, and then we can look at heat treatment, and then we could look at, deformation of aluminum or how it deforms under certain scenarios. Because you're not going to get everything that you want the first time you look it up. So you'll find results, and then that's great. You found a paper, but you've still got to keep going, keep digging, and keep refining your search to get really what you're wanting and digging into.
Now, I don't know if this would be relevant to that, but my approach would then be to look at some of these and try to think of other words. Mm-hmm. Like I would maybe put in there development instead of evolution, because people will pick the synonyms, right? That's what I don't know if y'all go to Google and like look for synonyms, but I do. And
it's okay.
So you can assume that other people are doing that as well. Or maybe you might want to search for something like applications of aluminum 7050, and I would speculate that maybe that type of paper may talk about how it was developed and why it's good for this application or now a new application and so on and so forth. So you kind of get creative thinking about, well, like, what would people be doing with this information? What do you want to do with this information? Go ahead.
And sometimes you'll find a paper that isn't related, but how she was saying that they'll talk about, part of, the development or the procedure for it. They may have 2 sentences, but then you look and they've cited 15 publications that you can then exactly need because that's what you're looking for. So sometimes even if a paper you're like, that's kind of a stretch, they might still have the resources that you need, especially if you're really looking for specifics about how something was developed or the response that it has under certain mechanical deformation or tensile strength or strain. And so it's great to have a laser focus for what you're looking for, but if you don't get those results, broaden it up and kind of start moving into papers that are originally questionably related, because they might actually help you out a lot.
And you can even look at, if you can see,
Yes, I can see.
The subjects, the words that you used up at the top to search are sometimes, or most of the time, bolded. And this is how, as Carly was saying, find some new words. This is a good way to, I don't know how aluminum works, but maybe you're trying to find the one about jewelry or silverware,
or it's different alloys of it.
Different alloys.
Yeah, like extruding, right? Maybe that gives you different.
That could find you some other sources that are more narrow. And you can also look at the references. So if we look.
This is where the full text is super handy, because
really
then you can go and look at the references right then and there.
And I like to, sometimes they have related documents on this part, because this is within a volume, so there's multiple, so you can maybe find something related to this topic along with just one source. You can find
Science
5
Direct
sources.
Loves that too. Whenever you download a paper from Science Direct, most of the time it'll come up with another kind of prompt that says, hey, you downloaded this one. Here are ones that are also cited with it. And sometimes that will lead you down a hole that you don't really want to go to, because sometimes they're not related. But sometimes you're like, oh, wow, that one's even better. And so you can kind of go through it, and a lot of them are really helpful with pulling up related documents. But you've got to get that first paper before you can keep kind of going down the hill.
Building your snowball.
Yeah, building the snowball is a good way to put it.
Yeah, you can also look at the references. This one I noticed has a lot of the same journal. And sometimes I like to grab from different journals because they sometimes are more more specific when they're talking about maybe material science. And you just want to talk about engineering and then also have that micro. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know any of those terms. And it's sometimes good to just check a few of the references within their document. So I like to just grab 5 maybe, or if you're feeling a little less picky, maybe 3. You can review those and see if they're good, and if they have similar references, or if they are utilizing only articles that are from before 2000, which is fine, but sometimes it's good to have that newer or better, sorry, I didn't mean that, because technology has changed and we need to have that perspective too. So sometimes it's good to just do some spot checking on their references to actually see about the validity of the article and of the writing research.
I also will go in when I pull stuff up sometimes like this. So for me, this is not super helpful because it's mostly just authors and publications. This is not super helping me right now. I tried aluminum 70. Am I spelling it right? Aluminum.
Yeah.
I tried that. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll do a Control F and I'll just search the document. And sometimes that will help you hone in because then you'll find, which citation I'm trying to find any citation in here, but
Third numbers.
you know, so here they're saying these guys observe this. So maybe if you were control effing hot deformation, then it would connect you right to this sentence where they're linking to linking it to existing research. Oh, here we go. Why that didn't come up, I don't know.
Sometimes you have to download it.
They spelled it aluminium.
Or that. So you maybe want to spot check that, and if they didn't, because this would be in a source of a book, that you may not want to use this. So this is a really, I'm so glad that this was here.
All right, look, I put 750 and I get 25 returns, right? So, and this is what I do. I try to hone in on where in the document, and then this pops you to wherever they're talking about exactly what you're looking for, and then you can see, is this what I want? No, that's unrelated. Maybe they talk about something else further down in a different section. And that's another way that you can kind of hone in on which of those references in that reference list are even relevant, right? Sometimes you don't even have to go to that reference. You can just see what they were pulling out of it and whether it's relevant.
Does anyone have any questions about that? Or do y'all have any insights? What y'all utilize when y'all are researching?
Anybody else have another topic
That they need help on?
that they'd be interested in?
Because I have to...
Spotlighting?
Yes. Anyone have one?
No?
I know y'all have some paper.
I have a paper on tungsten carbide cobalt. It's a CERMET.
Okay. What about you in the back?
Yeah, what about you? Sorry.
Is it a metal?
My question is more technical. Like,
Yeah.
The website isn't quite working. So who would I talk to? Like, I did a search for something. I found something. I went to try to get the text. It said I had to do interlibrary loan, and I tried going down that path. And every website I went to after that just kind of failed on me. So it's really more of a technical inner workings of the system than a topic. So if you want to go ahead and do
No, it's
something
okay.
else, this is
I'll
much more of a behind the scenes thing.
What I would do is I would go to the library website, and they have a help chat that they utilize, and
That was what I was, the contact.
that's what I would do.
Are you saying that when you got a result, it took you to that page that says your options are,
Right,
you clicked on interlibrary loan,
right.
and then it took you to interlibrary loan.
But it tried going to some website and then finally just failed out and said not available.
Okay, so I
I can tell you you can follow.
I do not use that button. I don't use that button that says take me to interlibrary loan. I have figured out, I don't know how, but I figured out, where's the library website?
I should have put it up, sorry.
It's okay. Do you know how to get to it from here? Because I have created a hot link on mine so that I just go straight to where you create the request.
We can also help you
Got it.
after.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, this is probably more a website issue than the meat of this topic. So feel free to carry on. We can do it afterwards.
So we've got this interlibrary loan request forms.
Okay.
So I got there by Googling Salmon Library create request.
Okay.
Then I clicked on that top thing, and if we're lucky, it will open.
I think this may be the site, WorldCat, or this may have been where I was trying to go, and it just didn't go anywhere. So.
It could just be slow.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, I got
Yep,
that.
right now.
So it could be down. It could be down.
Okay, maybe
So
it's
that's
just
where
down.
I would ask
That's
the
where
librarian.
I go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's just down for the moment then.
And then, ultimately it should,
It works.
I think what happens is when you click that button through the search, it will auto-populate some of the fields, but you can also just go to it separately and then populate the fields. So I use that a lot because I'll find stuff through Google Scholar. I won't be able to find it in the databases, so then I'll go to the library loan and I'll enter in all the information that way. But you can get there without going through that button.
But if
Okay,
it's
thank you.
down, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Talk to a librarian, and there's a chat, and they respond fairly fast.
Yeah, literally right out that window, OIT help desk, those are the people.
Fantastic. Now I know.
Well, there's the OIT hat in the library hat.
But isn't interlibrary loan also back in?
No, interlibrary loans up on the
They're in
front.
the front.
Anyone will help you. No. But sometimes you need to go talk to the people up
Yeah, I just to go to the OIT help desk apparently wrongly for everything, and then they tell me where I need to go. They are helpful. Okay.
And so now say we have our 50 results. So when do you know to stop? I could search literature all day. We can type in different words. I can keep pulling up different results, and I can download it all day long. But when do you stop? And so I think a lot of different people have different ways of doing this, or knowing when you're done, when you've got what you need. So for me personally, you can go to the next slide. For me personally, I love rabbit holes. Rabbit holes get me in a lot of trouble though, because I end up wasting days, and then I'm like, I didn't even find anything that I needed. Great. So typically, you need to recognize if you're in a rabbit hole, but to do that, you need to make sure that you had that original goal for what you were looking for at the beginning, like tungsten. You got to have a goal for what you're looking for, and so sometimes I do this by creating an outline. Like, think of whenever you're in high school and your professors or teachers tell you, make an outline where your paragraphs are going to be. And so I'll find literature and I'll just drop in the little reference with each paragraph. And so by the time, if I have 3 or 4 citations for each paragraph or each topic that I want to touch, then I stop and I'll start writing and I'll start going through the literature and see exactly what I find. And as I go through filling in my outline or my paper, then it'll come to me like, we do have a gap. I may found 3 papers that talk about one thing, but none of them talk about the other. And so typically I'll stop when I have 3 to 4 papers per topic that I want to keep looking at, because you can just keep adding papers all day long.
It's easy and fun, but you're
not
recommended.
Yeah, not recommended.
It's not the best way to manage your time.
It's one way, but you have other things that you need to take care of when you're in college, like groceries, and you can't be doing that.
And another way to help kind of keep you organized, which is going to be the next topic, is looking at reference managers. So those help a lot, especially for me. I'll make certain folders within the reference manager, and I can see how many papers that I have in each folder. And if I already have 15 papers, then I'm just going to start kind of going through those and start writing, and then see where the gaps come up as I'm trying to come up with a paragraph that wants to talk about something. So we can go to the next slide.
All right. So, well, I don't know. Are you guys clear, like, how you're in a rabbit hole?
Anyone?
Do you guys feel like you understand what we're talking about here? Okay.
Because it's hard to know when you're in one sometimes.
Yeah, because you're broadening your search sometimes, right? Maybe you don't have a lot of results that come up, and that's when you get stuck, like going off on some crazy tangent about Mars and who knows what.
Which is fun.
Which is interesting, but maybe not going to help you write your paper. So once you realize, like, hey, this isn't really... I think earlier there was a note in here about searching to your hypothesis, right? Like just keeping your eye on the prize. What's my hypothesis? And is this going to help support that?
To remain... I really love rabbit holes because they're so fun, but I take that opportunity to maybe save those to a different folder in Mendeley or those reference managers to maybe look at later. Yeah. And that way you're still appreciating the research and the time you put towards it, but you probably won't look at it.
Yeah, you get this sense of like, oh, I can't let this go because it's so interesting, but you just shunt that into a folder of I'll look at it later, and if you do, great.
Yeah. Some resources. Have any of y'all utilized Mendeley or Zotero or any others? Which ones? Zotero? Anyone do Mendeley? Anyone do both? No, I picked one. I have researched, a lot of librarians I'll ask them, which one do you like? And I think it's really just preference of you as an individual. So sometimes they'll update Mendeley and it was heartbreaking. And so I switched to Zotero. Yeah. But I still, when I was utilizing Mendeley on here to get this set up, I really loved it, so I may actually go back. Sometimes you can, do any of y'all have to do like an annotated bibliography for your research? Or have you ever heard of one? Okay.
No.
Okay, so sometimes for my thesis, I had to create one of these bibliographies. And it's a way that you can have a Word document with the sources and maybe a summary of what that paper is about. So I work with some individuals in the Army, and they can go through an annotated bib and see, oh, this is where she got this information, and this is what this article is about, without actually reading the entire article. So it's a little helpful if you're working in industry, and then they usually want you to do a white paper. If you want me to talk about that, I didn't know what that was 3 weeks ago, so we can figure it out. But,
Yeah, so I wanted to also bring up, which somehow I don't have it on the bullet points, but there's a colleague of ours that also uses something called Scrivener, which I think is originally designed for people that are writing literature, but it has this really interesting interface where you can kind of make cards where you could write a little card, and it makes it really easy to construct a paper sort of like one card at a time, basically. So, you know, you've got your one little blurb that you got maybe from one source, and you get all these cards together, and then you can kind of glue them together to make your paper. I thought it seemed really cool, and I just wanted to bring it up as something, you know, to put in your back pocket as, you know, if you haven't found something that worked for you, maybe that one would. It does have a small cost, like a subscription fee that's, I think, less than $10 or something like that.
I just use note cards and tape and put it on my wall, but then I kind of look crazy when family comes in because they see my research serial killer wall. But it is very helpful, but that interface is very cool, and I really wanted to check it out. But poor college students need to work with what they got.
Yeah, I think Derek, the guy that uses it, I think he came from a background of history. Like he has, I think, a PhD or a master's in history, and so he's used to using that. But I'm all for sort of like interdisciplinary exchange, and I think whatever works best for the way that you think of things. And if these other two don't work, Scrivener might be something to look at. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention about this was with the annotated bibliography. So you don't necessarily have to write a whole summary of the article, but you can just write what in that article was relevant to what you're doing. So basically, some of the people in our lab will, instead of, I do all this in Mendeley, but some people will make a big document with all the articles that they're interested in and what they're pulling out of each one. And this can also help if you, like me, have trouble remembering what article you read that in. So it also helps if you're not doing it as an annotated bibliography to put those things in your notes in your reference manager. This has me on it. Continue with the live. How to use and select reference managers. Okay. Yeah, I feel like you were kind of setting up what to do.
So we're going to start with Mendeley. Let's see. Okay. Oh, you did have it up here. Mm-hmm. Great.
Oh yeah, that literature and latte is the Scrivener one.
Yes, so this is the, how do you say it?
Scrivener?
Scrivener. And I'll just show you some of it because it's pretty interesting. You can like see the whole page, and you can also look at articles and be writing your paper on the same screen, which is really helpful if you only have one computer. Screen, sorry.
But
And
also,
this is the
side
part
note,
where
be
she-
cautious while you're like writing and looking at a publication at the same time, because if you copy their whole sentence word for word, then you're plagiarizing them. So be cautious. Sometimes I like to do that, or I'll have a paper and then I'll write notes about what the paper said, and then I'll take that note and write it. Because you've also got to be very cautious about plagiarism, because if I'm reading something and writing at the same time, sometimes it's a little closer to the sentence than it needs to be.
And it gets really hard to think of other ways to say it the more you look at it.
So just be cautious.
The more I've researched trust, the more I don't want to define trust in a paper, because I can't think of any more ways to say, hey, this is trust. But sometimes I utilize that, like, I have a technique where I try to rewrite the sentence like 10 times, and I look at, it's okay to look at synonym.com. It's okay. It won't affect your grade. But it's kind of nice to pull in some of the words, but you have to be careful because you don't want to feel like you're pulling in intellectual words that are too intellectual to where your audience is not comfortable reading it. So I'm going to pull up the library website and try to see one of those. Let's use this. Actually, we're not going to use this because it's a bad article.
It's a bad
It's a bad article.
Well, they spelled
We don't know
aluminum.
if
They
it's
spelled aluminum wrong, so I don't know if I trust it.
It's just the British.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, we're going to use something else. No, I'm just joking. So when I found this out today, and see, even we're learning stuff, you can export to Mendeley or to Zotero. And if you save this, it will, I guess we are going to start with Zotero, not Mendeley. So this screen, if you saw it, it happened very fast. But it put the article within the folder, so Lit Review, UAH. I have a lot of articles, so I have multiple folders. And this is kind of nice when you're researching, like if you have a research paper about aluminum and you have a research paper about psychology. This is a way to separate the two. And it's really helpful when you so you don't get like overwhelmed. And if you look over on the right side, you can check the authors and how well the citation pulled the information, because you can utilize this to cite in papers, and it will really make your life easier if on the front end your information is correct.
Yeah, so if you're using these reference managers to insert your in-text citations, or if you're using it to create your reference page or your bibliography, it's just going to put whatever it has in these fields. So if these fields are in any way not correct, and a lot of times it's just pulling that out of the document in kind of a unintelligible way. So you always want to make sure, if you're going to use the reference manager for that functionality, those are in there correctly.
I also sometimes will add, I can see here that they don't have the DOI, and sometimes that helps the reference manager pull in more information, and sometimes that's the first step I take when I'm trying to add in, because if you add in 20 and then go back and do it, it's kind of exhausting. Yeah.
What's DOI?
It is the identifier for the article. Let's see. So you can, I don't know if maybe
Yeah.
So it's right here. So I'll just do that right now.
Pretty much every single publication is going to have a DOI, and that's basically, you can type that in Google or wherever you want, and it'll pull up that exact paper. And so a lot of time in references, the papers that do utilize the DOIs, if you're viewing them electronically, you can click on it for the reference, and it'll pull up the paper that they referenced automatically, so that you don't have to go type it in.
Yeah, and then you can also, this is what Carly was talking about, where you can add notes. So you could talk about, this is laser, shock. and just add anything that you were wanting to highlight in that. So if you found a good reference, this is where I kind of do that too. I go down to the reference list and I'm like, there's multiple papers by Carly et al. And that is what I put there to know that I need to go back and look.
And you can also add tags, which I like to use sometimes. I'll tag. So sometimes if there's like a certain methodology or instrumentation that I'm kind of tracking, like if I'm really wanting to see who's used eye tracking to do research on trust, then I'll tag it with like eye tracking. And that way I can then pull up all the articles that I found that used eye tracking and that I was thinking of. I mean, you can also do that in the folders as well, but sometimes tags are kind of more useful than folders.
Yeah, I'm new to tags, but it seems to help when you have a lot of different constructs.
Mm-hmm. If you wanted to, like, you know, maybe you have something that's all interest, but you specifically wanted to see this or that. Super helpful.
Anyone have any questions about Zotero? You can also, their website is fairly helpful. And this is my account, but you can also make groups. So you could see that I had a programming and autism group, and this has a bunch of papers related to programming and autism. And so I made a private group, so if you have a group project, you can create it and y'all can all share the documents, and y'all can all share in the knowledge, and the space on a computer can be less. And that can you see the other people?
Yeah, so that's great it's great for collaborating as well. Mendeley is really similar to Zotero.
Yeah. So Mendeley is,
I think Mendeley is developed by Elsevier. I don't know how to say it, but they're a publisher, a big publisher as well. And this particular program used to have a desktop application, but they're no longer supporting it, and they're only doing the web-based version. I still use the web-based version because I didn't want to learn a new thing right in the middle of doing my thesis. So I still use that, and you can add tags to it just like you can in Zotero. You can collaborate, you can create folders as well.
I've researched the preferences a lot, and it's really just up to you. That's really all it comes down to. They do the exact same thing. They're both free for an extent of space, and even if they, like I had too many articles on Mendeley, and so when I transferred over to Zotero, I had to pay a little. So it was kind of unfortunate, but when you're in the middle of your thesis, you don't want to maybe lose that. Yeah. So, but another way you can look up articles, this is not through the library, but when I clicked the link to full text, it took me to this. So this is just another way to add articles to your databases. You can add the extensions, so the websites will have a place where it'll be like add a web extension to like Chrome or Firefox.
The extensions that are helpful are like here Mendeley and Zotero, but also you can add a Google Scholar, and you can highlight stuff on here that will then automatically give you like the first 5 results on Google Scholar. So that's another good one.
So I'm going to do this article to Mendeley. I'm just going to sign in real quick.
While she's signing in, also whenever you're writing your paper and doing in-text citations using Mendeley and using Zotero, I don't remember what the default is, but there's one where your citation is in a certain format. So if you need IEEE, or if you need APA, or if you need Nature, within the programs themselves, you can specify what format that you want it to put it in the document with. That took me a little while to figure out because it kept putting it in there wrong, and I was like, no, I need it in a different format. But you can do that, and so make sure that if it is in the wrong format, you're not going in and hand typing it. The program can fix it for you.
You do want to still check them.
Yes, definitely.
Especially if it's not just a number.
Yeah.
Because your teacher will notice.
Yeah. I've had some that it was a engineering, journal, and it was on like an alloy, and the citation was to something in psychology. Like somehow it got really mixed up, and I input it, and I was like, yeah, this is my citation, and I just kept typing, and then I went to look at the list later, and I was like, where is this? This is from psychology? And I was like, this is not what I thought it was. So that goes back to double checking while you're importing, because it's not always perfect.
And this is how, so when I logged in, I just clicked that extension, and it's asking what library. So I have tons of libraries that I utilize, but I made one for this lit review, so all you do is click add.
This is also sometimes handy for
it's very
broadening your
helpful.
search, because sometimes stuff will pop up.
I've found
from
really
the
good
references.
articles and references through looking at
This pop
the
up that
pop-up.
mentally gives you.
it's like,
Yeah.
you can look at more movies or more articles, so it's kind of nice to, so let me put Mendeley. And there it is, and sometimes you can even see, if you click on it, you can look at the differences in the quality of information that Zotero grabbed and the quality of information that Mendeley grabbed, and sometimes, Mendeley grabbed the DOI. So that just goes along with understanding that less work goes into Mendeley, maybe.
And then, can I just show real quick? So if you are doing Mendeley and you want to do, you can add annotations here. Now these will just go on the general reference, but you can also go in here where you read it, and then you can highlight in here, you can add a comment.
You can do this in Zotero too.
Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put a comment here, and maybe I'll say, whatever this is. I don't know what this even means, but, I'll put that in there. And then when I come later, here's this, and I want to find where in this article did I read that one sentence about that one thing, and I can come in here, click on it, and it takes me right to that part of the article. So I think that is super handy. And then you can also highlight as well. I've never used that rectangle, but
I love to highlight the text, different colors. So I like to highlight information that I really need in red. You can pick any color you like. But sometimes it's easy to look at the whole article and get overwhelmed. So sometimes I like to piece apart the article and grab the more important things. And that way, next time I read it, in a week, I can just read the important parts.
Mm-hmm. And then you can also just put general notes in here as well. But I really love this comment thing, mainly because if you have a 20-page article and you can't remember what page you saw that one sentence that said, we did this experiment on dogs and it worked on dogs. Here it is right here, and boom, it takes me right to where I read that.
And Control Find isn't working.
Yeah.
This is really
always,
useful.
Yes, so highly recommend that. Okay.
And they both have pretty much the same ability. So you can add a group in Mendeley just like you can Zotero. Just click on it.
Yeah,
So you can go down to groups, and if I say new groups, you have to go on the website and log in. So it's the same on Zotero. You just have to do it on their application rather than the desktop version.
It is a little buggy, and sometimes, what shows up in groups doesn't necessarily show up in your own collections, and vice versa. So you just got to be careful. Also, which document, which folder you put all those comments in. Because if you have one in your collections and one in your groups, and you do all your comments on the one in the groups, it will not link those together for some dumb reason, which can be very frustrating. But if you know about it, then you can kind of work around it. Or you can go to Zotero, where that may or may not happen.
Trying to load up our slideshow again.
And so that's pretty much the basic overview. The main things that we wanted to make sure that we talked about were, how do you know how to start? How do you know how to stop? Where do you look for the information? And then, we wanted to make sure that you guys know how to use reference managers as well, because they do really help. Instead of just having them all in your downloads on your computer, that's what I did until I learned about reference managers. And so they've helped me out a lot. So
I did want to add one thing to the reference managers. You can also download a Word plugin to where you can, here, let me pull that. I'm like, these are my publications, y'all need to see them. We can do different ones. So this is connected to Mendeley, and you can do this also with Zotero. Word also has, if you see it's in Zotero right now, if you go to references, you can click Mendeley site, and this is what pops up.
And it will connect and sort of sync with your account in that reference manager.
Sometimes you have to refresh if you just added a paper.
But sometimes to get this to show up, like if you have Grammarly and to get it to show up in here, sometimes you have to go into the plugins and search and select it and then manually add it.
So
I think there was a YouTube video that showed how I did. I followed it.
Yeah.
But it's nice being able to cite as you're writing so that you don't forget. Sometimes I'll write a sentence, and if I don't immediately cite it, then I forget that I not necessarily stole that, but that I used another publication. And so it's nice to have these plugins because you can immediately just put that citation there so that you're giving credit to the researchers who have already done it, and you're not accidentally plagiarizing something. So if you're using Word, it's definitely a very good tool to be able to use.
But again, it's going to insert whatever is in those fields in the program. So if it has the wrong thing in the author field, it's gonna make this look really wonky. So just make sure that if you're going to use a reference manager to do this, that anytime you add something in there, you're checking to make sure it's correct before you hide it away in a folder.
And then you can also insert your bibliography, and it does it all for you. There were a lot more on the first page, so there's going to be 3 here. But this is an easy way. You still want to spot check. Sometimes you can tell that the human factors is italicized. Sometimes they're not all italicized, so you want to make sure. And then you definitely want to make sure your teacher is okay with you utilizing these tools, because sometimes the point of English 101 is to understand how to cite.
Yeah, so we have a professor in our department who really doesn't like when you use these.
Which is okay.
You'll hear it. You'll hear all about it. So
just be careful.
Make sure your professor is okay with you using this, and make sure that you're not just blindly accepting whatever it puts in there. Definitely go through your papers and make sure it was correct. But this enters in it creates a bibliography with any of those citations that you've inserted. And it does all of the references for them.
And you can do this in Mendeley and Zotero within Word.
And this is also where I was mentioning that if it's not in the style that you need, you can tell the program to change the citation style to go to IEEE or MLA or whatever you want. Because some journals want you to cite it in a certain way. So just making sure that you know your citation styles and know what you should be using, it helps just to double check it on both sides.
Yeah, I switched from APA to IEEE, and it's totally opposite numbers and author names. So
it's kind of weird to have to switch. So that's a super handy functionality. And even different conferences will want you to cite stuff in different formats as well.
Does anyone have any questions? Or we can go and help put the Word plugin on your computer if you need help, because I know that that's kind of, if you need help, you can always email us, or I saw a look of disappointment, maybe.
My laptop broke a couple months ago, so I don't have a computer for you to put on.
Well, I think do you have a tablet?
Oh yeah, an iPad.
Does it have Word?
You can get Word on there.
Well, I'm sure it's possible. But if anyone needs any help looking for the library database or anything that they need, we wanted to utilize this time to be more interactive and maybe walk around.
Or if you have questions, so these are all the topics we covered. So if there was something here that didn't make sense to you or you wanted more information on, now is the time to tell us.
We love research.
Test us.
Please let us help you. And if you needed help, like a technical problem, yeah, that too.
I still don't think the interlibrary loan website was working because I really did want to show you guys the interlibrary loan because it seems scary, but it's not. It's very basic.
And you can put little notes in there to the interlibrary loan people, which I love to do.
It might work this time. So let me.
But yeah, if you need help researching, you can just raise your hand and one of us will come by. I can also give you my email and you can just email me all your questions about research and I will definitely answer it.
And so here is what the interlibrary loan website, whenever it works, it'll pull up this once. It'll make you log into your UAH account. You can see that I've requested several, but you can just want to show you what it looks like. So whenever you go to create a request, give them as much information as you can. Don't just like put the article name and hope that they can find it. Be respectful of their time, please.
There's a minimum.
They're very nice people.
Yeah, there's a minimum that you have to put in there. The title, I think the author.
The title, the journal title of article. And so like, I mean, if you don't know everything, that's okay. But all you have to do is know what you're looking for and put in as much information and let them know what type of requests you have. And you can also add comments. Sometimes, you know, if something was odd or if they can't find it or you just want to tell them that they're nice people.
Yeah, sometimes I'll put like a little, you guys are great, thank you so much. Because what'll happen is I'll like hammer them with like 12 of these in a row and I'll like want to put a little note in there that says, thank you, I appreciate you.
But don't be scared to use this. I mean, it's there. There's also books.
I have utilized the book for, like I have 3 books that I cite in my thesis, and it really helps to have different perspectives from maybe like if you're looking at more theory, sometimes the theory is more research within a book, or just you can find a general overall feel for the research.
Yeah, and once they get it in, I think they send an email. I believe, so you'll get an email saying, hey, you know, they were able to get it or they weren't able to get it, or and they'll let you know, and then you'll just come here and you'll be able to have a link to download it. It's very simple, very easy, and don't be afraid to use interlibrary loans.
Definitely. And there's different, so I wanted to show you guys where you can get some of that information. So the stuff, the way, at least the way I use interlibrary loan, it's like I found something, say on here on Elsevier, and it's behind a paywall. I don't know why this won't close, but it's behind a paywall. But all the things you need to put in there, right? Like the journal title, the volume, the date, it's all right in here. Sometimes there's more information here, the DOI.
Yeah, the DOI, like, will take them directly to the article that you're trying to do.
Yeah, so if nothing else, try to find the DOI and give it to interlibrary loan, because that is what takes them to the exactly where the article is with the publisher, whoever the publisher is. And then sometimes there's information at the bottom as well. Maybe not on this one. I might be thinking of Emerald.
Sometimes there's if I'm on the library website, I don't know how technology is crazy. It'll say interdisciplinary loan, and I'll click that, and it will take me to the UAH website. And sometimes it's just nested within if you are logged into your account. But that only happens sometimes.
Again, I don't like to
and it
use
kind of
that
gets
button.
in a loop sometimes. So I like to go
one.
I like the method Carly uses.
Yeah, and like how Megan showed that page that lists all of your requests, that's what I bookmarked. I bookmarked that, and as long as I'm signed in, I can go there and I can click the create request button. And I really like to do it that way. So I think, let's stop the recording. And then,
if anyone has any...
Do you have any closing words?